Hey y'all, I'd like to welcome you back to our little journey and let you know that, of course, I appreciate you, and I really mean that. And we're really in this together. There's been a lot of people who've contacted me about this particular situation, and I imagine there's a lot of other people who will contact me in the future about it, and I look forward to it. I appreciate you. I want to take a quick recap on the little bit that we've dived down already. All right, and of course, a lot of people are very familiar know that we're about to dive way down. There's so much to know about Parkland that it is enraging in a sense, all right, or at least overwhelming to a lot of people. Okay, but to recap what we've already been over, just to not even think about the very complex, very revealing details that we already all well know, most of us. To recap over what we've gone over in this particular dive is the school, number one, how easy it was, allegedly, for a Nicholas Cruz or a shooter in general to just get inside the school and start doing whatever they want, right? Pretty much facing no consequence. Going all throughout the school, and it's 3 stories, going through every story and shooting it up, maybe, right? And then eventually the absurdity of escaping while deputies have surrounded the building, right? Escaping even though the building is on lockdown at that point and there are no children to mix in with. You're leaving by yourself. There's no one else with you. You're walking out of the door and then you proceed doing a light jog. The absurdity of that taking place during a school lockdown, all sort of gunshots and calamity. You're going to take a light jog across the campus if you're Nicholas Cruz, and the absurdity of that happening, and then mixing in with the children. And meanwhile, you have an Alexa Midnick. We discussed that. And for sure, she could be very misled. She might not have heard gunshots. Maybe she was confused. Maybe she just heard people saying that there was gun. What building is she even talking about? Very, very simple questions. We discussed how it's absurd that we've never heard from her ever again. Being as that she's probably the most sensational thing that you could even bring up in regards to Parkland. All right? And we never heard from her ever again. We don't know what the heck building she was talking about, leaving out. That would be very interesting to know. What building is she even talking about? All right? What exact building? But can't ask her that. We've discussed that. She's disappeared. All right? And we're going to discuss so much that, I mean, if you're not convinced by that, I don't expect you to be. There's a million details that we got lined up to go over. But before we do, I want to take this moment out to discuss probably the elephant in the room. And that would be, as we alluded to before, former Sheriff Scotty Israel. Okay? And he's very interesting. And in that, he's still hitting the headlines today. A lot of people might be familiar. You might hear about it on Google. Sheriff Scotty Israel, the person who oversaw all the whole calamity. And the other thing is, you can't blame someone for shooting people up in your county. All right? But the response, as we've discussed and dissected previously, was absolutely horrid, all right, to say the least. And that's going by the original account. Was absolutely there was no response, all right? The response was nothing, basically. They came up with nothing at all. To the point is where a different police under different jurisdiction went ahead and picked up Nicholas Cruz after he had allegedly gone to Walmart and got a soda pop at the subway and then went to McDonald's to chill out for a while. Okay. Scott Israel, he's very interesting in that he's still in the headlines. You might understand that he does want his job back. He feels like it's been stolen from him. This is very public. This beef that he has with Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida. Feels like Ron DeSantis is making a political move, and he got all out of line, and in his political rampage, he promised the blood, metaphorically speaking, of Scotty Israel, and promised to absolutely fire him from his job for being such a terrible sheriff on record, and that's even before the Parkland incident to begin with, right? A lot of people remember the airport incident, and trust me, that is key. It's key because nothing was learned from the airport incident. And if anything was learned, it certainly was not corrected by the time Parkland happened. And everything was apparent. Everything that they should have known, they didn't know or pretended to not know. And so when Parkland, when the Marjory Stoneman Douglas incident took place, all the lessons they should have learned, they did not learn. Right? So you have all that. You have a Scotty Israel. He's trying to get his job back. He's saying everything's very political. Now, just looking at the face value of things, you would assume a Scotty Israel's best bet would be to lay low and stay up out of the headlines, not try to get his job back. That is absurd. He dropped the ball in every kind of way. And we're going to discuss all the different ways in a later video. All right. But right now, and just to keep it simple, I want to discuss Scotty Israel. We know he's a liar. We know that, I mean, even if we didn't know that, we know that there are many peers in his line of work who have gone on record to basically say that Sheriff Israel is a liar, and that he lies a lot, and that he's made a career of lying. Okay. I couldn't say one way or another, but what I did want to point out right now is, okay, he's being accused of being a liar. He's being proven to be a terrible sheriff at the very least. Okay, he is being done all these things, but he's also perhaps potentially, not to say he's lying, but very, very wrong about what even took place on February 14th, 2018 at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. The thing is, as you might recall, and you can pull it up on the internet, and you're going to get bits and pieces, depending on where you look. You're going to see a lot of Scott Israel's testimony. As you can imagine, a sheriff is the person who delivers what the public needs to know about on a need-to-know basis, is like, for example, what took place in Marjory Stoneman Douglas. The sheriff is who typically comes out and announces what he knows, what they don't know, what they discovered, what's for the public to be aware of. At bare minimum, Scott Israel was perhaps potentially wrong on almost every account as to what took place in that building. For example, you know, we discussed it earlier, but on the second floor, there's still speculation as to whether or not anybody got shot on the second floor. Why the speculation? Not exactly sure, but it might have something to do with Scotty Israel saying that somebody got shot on the second floor. You can find various clips, and they're going to be archived until the end of YouTube, the end of the internet, perhaps, of Scotty Israel claiming that nobody even shot up the third floor. Scotty Israel might have been very wrong. Maybe he was under a lot of distress on those days following this incident. Perhaps he was. Thing is, he was very wrong. It doesn't even matter whether or not he was lying. It doesn't even matter that a liar. It doesn't even matter that he's a liar necessarily. What matters is that potentially he was very wrong about what even took place. Was there somebody shot on the second floor? How come he was wrong about the third floor? How come he should have known all these details? And if he didn't know these details, he should have shut up about it. Because as it turned out, a lot of people got shot on the third floor. And this is something that he had publicly stated did not happen. All right. It's highly debated on whether or not there was a gas mask in the situation, simply because we had senators and other different various officials saying that there was gas masks. All right. It was a Sheriff Scotty Israel who told us, no, there was not no gas mask. And wouldn't he be the person to know? Right? He said there wasn't. Well, if he's saying there wasn't, how come there's all sort of people saying there was? To include not only the senator, but witnesses such as teachers on location said they saw someone in a gas mask. Sheriff Scotty Israel said there was nobody with no gas mask. We heard about smoke bombs and smoke grenades. Sheriff Scotty Israel said, no, there were no smoke bombs and no smoke grenades. He said that's out in the public. He might be terribly wrong about the situation. And if that is the case, shouldn't we know how wrong he is? Instead, here's the reality of the situation. It seems as though everybody out there in the mainstream and even in the alternative media, they're not thinking, okay, well, if Sheriff Scotty Israel is an extreme liar and we have him saying things that potentially could be absolutely incorrect about that incident, the timeline is kind of not really working out. And trust me, we haven't even graced the tip of the iceberg on the timeline not working out. All right. It could be that Sheriff Scotty Israel is like Mr. Magoo and he has not one single clue what happened in that building. And if that's the case, tell me how that happens. And tell me how sensational that is. That this known liar and textbook looking evil person, Scotty Israel, was perhaps potentially very wrong about what took place in that building. Provably wrong, all right? And he's never apologized for it. He's never come out and said, oh, I'm sorry, I got things terribly wrong. No, instead, he's desperately in some sort of power struggle politically trying to get his job back. And that in and of itself is absurd. We're going to discuss that in much, much greater detail. But just suffice it to say, that's a lot of nerve on a Scotty Israel. All right, and I think he deserves our attention. He seems to pop up in a lot of these headlines lately. Anyways, I'll holler at y'all the next time. There's definitely a lot of different things to go over. We're definitely going to dive down into just how wrong Scotty Israel was. All right, and how much of a liar he might potentially be. I appreciate y'all, and let me know what's popping in the streets.